something I've been meditating on in the book of Genesis, chapter 15. Abram, who becomes Abraham, is declared righteous because he believed Yahweh in Genesis chapter 15, verse 6, when Yahweh tells Abraham to look toward heaven and number the stars in verse 5 of Genesis chapter 15. And he says, if you're able to number them, and then he says to Abram, he's like, you see those stars? Can you number them? Huh? Are you able to? Well, that's how many your offspring is going to be. It's going to be like that. And Abram believed Yahweh, and Yahweh counted it to him as righteousness, right? So Abram receives righteousness. That's what it means when it says Yahweh counted it to him. Counted is kashab in Hebrew. It means to put into your account or even to consider, right? That's where Paul says, consider yourselves dead to the flesh, but alive in Christ. It's in your account. So come into an agreement with it, right? Because it's in your account. Believe it. But then Abram starts to question things. Because Yahweh tells Abram in verse 7, I am Yahweh who brought you out from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. But Abram says, O Lord Yahweh, how am I to know that I shall possess it? See, so how am I to know? Didn't Yahweh just give him his word? I mean, Abram believed him before, but now he starts to question things, just like you and I. Once we're declared righteous because we believe in Jesus, guess what? We want, how am I to know something? How am I to know this? How am I to know that? How am I to know I got saved? How do I know I got saved? And everybody says, well, you got to have faith, got to have faith, got to have faith. Yeah. But you know, what God does is he gives you gifts. He shows you things. If you have a hard time believing or having faith, he'll help you. And if you're watching this channel, I want to give you a gift he's given me, and I'm sharing that gift with you. We'll continue on and you'll find out about it. How am I to know that I shall possess it? Yahweh says to him in verse 9 of Genesis chapter 15, he said to him, bring me a female calf, 3 years old, a female goat, 3 years old, a ram, 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And Abram brought him all these, cut them in half, and laid each half over against the other. But he did not cut the birds in half. He did not cut the birds in half. I put a footnote, see Jeremiah 34:18. I did it a while back, but let's just see what that says, because I can't remember right now. And the men who transgressed my covenant and did not keep the terms of the covenant that they made before me, I will make them like the calf that they cut in two and passed between its parts. Interesting. A calf cut in two. So if you take one calf, you cut it in two. It looks like the number 11, doesn't it? It's one calf cut in two. These two parts are still made of the same substance of each other, As this one is, so is this one, right? One calf cut in two. Number 11 looks like two numbers, yet it's one number that looks like two. And we have the word covenant here. I'm really glad that we read this, because on this verse in Jeremiah 34:18, I wrote down, see Genesis chapter 15, verse 10. So when we go back to Genesis chapter 15, verse 10, it says that he cut them in half. Abram brought all these, cut them in half, laid each half over against the other, but he did not cut the birds in half. But in Jeremiah, it says they cut the calf in half. They passed between the calf. They passed through the calf. Well, let's continue. And when birds of prey came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Interesting. I said, see Jeremiah chapter 34, verse 20. I should have kept my finger open to Jeremiah. Let's just read that now. Jeremiah 34:20. And I will give them into the hand of their enemies, and into the hand of those who seek their lives. Their dead bodies shall be food for the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth. Interesting. But when the birds of prey came down on the carcasses, back to Genesis, Abram drove them away. See, these are all Selah moments for me. This whole story so far is such a Selah moment. And as the sun was going down, by the way, it doesn't mean the sun was going down. The word going down in Hebrew is bo, B-O. It means to come in or go out, or just to go. Come in, go out, go. So as the sun was going, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, dreadful and great darkness fell upon him. See, this is just, to me, it's like, wow. When I read this, I'm trying to be there and see what's going on. Now, this is dreadful and great darkness. Abram's not having a pretty little dream here. He's fallen asleep, and dreadful and great darkness fell upon him. Then Yahweh said to Abram, know for certain. Now, this is terrible, right? This is like, he just got promised that he's going to have a whole bunch of kids, right? Innumerable, unless you can number the stars. Because Yahweh says, look up to the stars. See all that? That's how your descendants are going to be, your offspring, your seed. And Yahweh says to Abram, while Abram's sleeping, because he has a deep sleep fell on him. So Yahweh's talking to Abram while he's sleeping. Know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners. Sojourner is ger in Hebrew. It means a stranger, an alien. So your offspring will be strangers. They will be aliens in a land that is not theirs. And they will be servants there, slaves. And they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve. This is Egypt, you guys. This is Yahweh telling Abram, your descendants are going to be slaves in Egypt for 400 years, right? This land, in a land that is not theirs. There'll be servants there. They'll be afflicted. They'll be slaves. They'll be beaten. They'll be tortured for 400 years. They'll be abused. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve. And afterward, they shall come out with great possessions. And yes, they did. Acts chapter 7, verse 7. Acts chapter 7, verse 7. Well, let's go to verse 6, because this is important too. And God spoke to this effect, that his offspring, this is Abraham's offspring, Abram's offspring, would be sojourners in a land belonging to others who would enslave them and afflict them for 400 years. We just read about that. But I will judge the nation that they serve, said God. Okay, so now we have the writer of Acts saying that this God is Yahweh, right? Because he said God. And over in Genesis, it says that Yahweh told Abraham these things. And so the writer of Acts, who is Luke, he says that God was speaking to Abraham. But I will judge the nation that they serve, said God. And after that, they shall come out and worship me in this place. Right? And when they came out, what happened? They had, back to Genesis, they had great possessions. Yes, they took a whole bunch of stuff with them, didn't they? Verse 15 of Genesis 15. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age. And they shall come back here in the 4th generation. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Amorites. Wow. Amorites are hybrids, you guys. If you do your deep dive studies, Amorites, hybrid blood. But that's not for today. But the iniquity of the Amorites is not complete. Selah on that. Selah means to pause, meditate, think about this, right? Let it really sink in. Verse 17, when the sun had gone down, or, like I said earlier, when the sun had bow in Hebrew, to come in or go out, and it was dark, behold. Now here's what's trippy, man. This is where I'm like, what is this? This really grasps my attention. When the sun had gone out, come in or gone out, and it was dark, behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. See, he cut the what? He cut the female calf in half. He cut a female goat and a ram, which is a male, right? A male sheep, a ram. Cuts those in half. Doesn't say he cut... It doesn't say that he cut a turtle dove and a young pigeon in half. Or maybe he did. Actually, listen. In verse 9, it says, bring me a heifer, 3 years old. A heifer is a female calf. A female goat, 3 years old. A ram, 3 years old. A turtle dove and a young pigeon. And he brought him all these, cut them in half. Okay, so the birds were cut in half. Oh, no. The birds weren't cut in half. He brought all these, cut them in half, and laid each half over against the other, but he did not cut the birds in half. Okay, so I was right then, because I'm like, wait, I didn't think he cut the birds in half. No, he did not cut the birds in half. Interesting. Back to verse 17, when the sun had gone down and it was dark, behold, a smoking fire pot. A fire pot is tanur in Hebrew. Tanur, T-A-N-N-U-R. It means a portable stove or a furnace. So a portable stove and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. That's interesting. That's interesting. Because we just read about in Jeremiah that let's go back to it again. Jeremiah chapter 34. If this doesn't interest you, sorry, it just does me. I'm trying to put these puzzle pieces together. Jeremiah chapter 34, verse 18. I will make them like the calf that they cut into and passed between its parts. Who is they? I know Abram's one of them. But was there an angelic being? Was there someone Abram couldn't see? Because all it says is a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. Was this Yahweh himself doing this? Because it says they. Who is they? Who was the being that was there with Abram passing this fire pot, this portable stove, and a flaming torch between these pieces? Verse 18, on that day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your offspring I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. Okay, I'm going to just stop right there. Yahweh makes a covenant with Abram. Now, this word covenant sure does keep on showing up quite a bit. In fact, it shows up 284 times in the Old Testament, the Hebrew. And it's the word berith in Hebrew. It means covenant, which also means alliance, an alliance, a joining together, becoming allies, right? Or a league even, a team, a league, an alliance, a joining together, a covenant. Now, when is the first time that this word covenant is used? Let's go to the first time it's used. It's Genesis chapter 6, verse 18. God says to Noah, I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. So this is the first mention of covenant. And then you remember that God gives Noah a rainbow sign, a sign of the covenant. The sign was what? The rainbow. Verse 9 of Genesis chapter 9, I will establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you. Verse 11, I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I make between you and every living creature that is with you for all generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Interesting. So God gave Noah a sign. Sign in Hebrew is oath, O-T-H, oath. It means sign, symbol, or mark. A sign, symbol, or mark. Do you know that you wear a mark of God? We all wear a mark. God marked us, right? We don't have the mark of the beast. We have the mark of God. It's a sign. It's an oath. It's a symbol. And if God gave Noah a sign, and it was a sign of his covenant, do you understand? His covenant, saying, I am joining myself together with you. We are one in this. We are one. That's what a covenant is. It's a marriage, right? If you make a covenant with somebody in your life and you say, I take you as my wife, or I take you as my husband, you're coming into a covenant together, joining together as one. Do you understand? That's what covenant is. So the first mention of covenant is here in Genesis chapter 6, verse 18. And then we go to the last mention, because I want to do the first mention and the last. Malachi chapter 3, verse 1. The last mention, not in the whole entire Bible, but in the Old Testament. Malachi chapter 3, verse 1. Behold, I send my messenger, my malak in Hebrew, which is also the word angel. In Greek, malak would be angelos, which is angelos, or angelos is how you would phonetically, you would speak it. Phonetic means the way it sounds. So it's spelled A-G-G-E-L-O-S, but it sounds like angelos. That's where we get the word angel, right? In Greek, this angelos is like a mailman. A mailman, somebody that delivers mail. What is mail? A message to you, a letter to you. So they're messengers. So God says, behold, in Malachi. Do you understand Malachi? Malachi has the same meaning as angel, Malek. Do you understand? So God's going to send my Malek. This is Malachi writing Malek, right? Behold, I send my messenger, my Malek, Who's John the Baptist. We learn about this in Matthew chapter 11, verse 10, and we learn about this in Mark chapter 1, verse 2. John the Baptist, he's the messenger that prepares the way before me, says Yahweh, before me. So John the Baptist, this is a prophecy of John the Baptist. God's going to send him, and he's going to prepare the way before me. Before who? Before Yahweh. And the Lord, the Adon in Hebrew, Adon, whom you seek, will suddenly come to his temple. Oh, the one you seek, the Messiah. Oh, you get it? This is a prophecy about the Messiah. Whom you seek will suddenly come into his temple. And the messenger, the Malek of the covenant, in whom you delight, behold, he is coming, says Yahweh of hosts. Interesting. So somebody is coming, the messenger, the Malek of the covenant. Okay, so it's like John the Baptist is a mailman. And he's bringing everybody, he's preparing the way of, he's telling there's somebody coming. This is the one you've been waiting for. And this one will bring you a covenant. This Messiah will make a covenant with you. And when Jesus comes, he makes a covenant. And as an introduction to this covenant, he brings two things to the table. He brings them bread, and he brings them wine. Interesting, because guess what? So did a man named Melchizedek. Melchizedek meets Abram after Abram goes to war against all these armies. And Melchizedek, what's he do? Comes and brings bread and wine. Melchizedek, a king and a priest. Interesting. A king and a priest, all in one. Two things that make one, right? Just like the number 11. 11 is two number ones joined together to make one number. Number 11, I mean. But it's one number. Yet it looks like two, but it's one. And Jesus brings bread and wine, two things, one covenant. Looks like two, but it's one covenant. A symbol, a sign of this covenant. What is the covenant? What is the covenant? The covenant is a marriage. It's a marriage. It's an agreement. It's an oath. Oath. Do you understand? We say the word oath in English, oath in Hebrew. Oath is, it's a symbol. It's a sign. So Jesus gave me a symbol and a sign. And he gave it to me years ago. And it's the number 11. I had no idea what was going on years ago when I was seeing this number supernaturally, because I wasn't looking for it. It's like it was looking for me. And it's like it was calling my name. Hey, look at your clock. And I'd look at my clock and boom. Oh, number 11. Not 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. We're talking like 5:11, 6:11, 7:11, 10:11, 11:11, you know, on and on it goes. 1:11. I was seeing 11s like that, and I still do all day, every day. And when I first started seeing this, I didn't know what was going on, and then I went online and I looked up, what's the biblical meaning of number 11? Oh, it's disorder and chaos. And I'm like, so if God's trying to tell me something, I'm like, disorder and chaos? Are you trying to say my life is full of disorder and chaos? Well, guess what? Thanks a lot. I already knew it. I didn't need this number to show it to me. So, whoop-de-doo, buddy. I already knew that. I'm full of disorder and chaos. Thank you. But what I didn't know is that God took that sign and gave it to me for a purpose. The number 11, by the way, here's what's interesting. Think about the number 11. Who was the 11th son of Israel, otherwise known as Jacob? The 11th son was Joseph. And Joseph was a figure of Jesus. Study that story. It's amazing. He was the 11th. Doesn't sound like a disorder or chaos number to me. Guess what else? Jesus chose 12 disciples to follow him. How many stayed loyal to him? 11. Because Judas, he betrayed him. There was 11 that stayed loyal. Not such a bad number, is it? Disorder? Chaos? Doesn't sound like it. So now that I can, and I can keep on going with this number, let me tell you. It's like that thing with the one heifer or female calf. You take it, you split it in half. Is it two calves? No. It's one calf. It's just been split in half. Now it looks like two, but it's still one. They're of the same substance, right? And that's where you can go to 1 John 4:17, where it says, as he is, talking about Christ, so are you in this world. You might look like two spirits, but you're one spirit with the Lord, see? Joined together. Something that God showed me when I was praying to him about this. Why am I seeing 11? Why am I seeing 11? Are you trying to tell me something? I got taken up into a vision, I would guess you could call it. Taken up into a vision. How was I taken up? Because I suddenly had a heavenly view looking down upon the earth, okay? This is the truth. I'm sharing it with you. So it's as if I'm God looking down upon the earth, and what I saw was an ox. And then I saw another ox. And when you take two ox, you call them oxen, right? And the oxen were joined together side by side. And there was a yoke that was put across their shoulders. And this yoke causes the oxen to move in harmony as one. And Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary, tired, worn out. I will give you rest. How does he do that? He says, take my yoke. Now, let me tell you something. This is where the Jehovah's Witnesses got it wrong. Because when Jesus dies on what's called a tree, what is tree? It's wood. So when he dies on this tree or this wood, the Jehovah's Witnesses have him on one piece of wood with his arms stretched above his head like this, with his hands nailed together, with one nail going through his hands, with his hands over his head like this, right? And they say, see, that's the way he died. He died on a torture stake, just one piece of wood. Well, when you read about it, Jesus carried some wood when he was on his way to be nailed to another piece of wood, right? Now, this wood that he was carrying looks like a yoke. See this in the spirit, you guys. And when Jesus hung on these two pieces of wood, right? His hands were nailed and they were wide apart on this wood, this yoke. And this yoke stands for you being up there with him. Just like the oxen, the two are joined together as one. You are yoked to Yeshua. You are yoked to him on the cross. And when you are risen with him, you are yoked to him in the risen Christ. And as the risen Christ is, so are you right here, right now in this world. Now you got to remember, they put on the sign above his head, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. What's a king do? A king sits on a throne. And on a throne, he doesn't have his hands above his head. He has his hands here on the throne, apart, right? And when Jesus hung on the cross, that was their mockery. Here's your throne, O king. Yeah, but his hands were nailed to this wood. Do you understand? The king on his throne. He was on the cross for us. They made a mockery of him, but if you see what happened in the spirit, you will not mock or ridicule at all. It will be so powerful to you. Proof that he died on a cross. Other proof is Thomas, the one we call the doubter, right? Well, he said, I'm not going to believe Jesus is raised from the dead unless I see the nail prints or the nail holes that are in his hands, from the nails that were in his hands, from the nails, plural, in his hands, Thomas said. Plural. He didn't say the one nail that was in between the two hands. He said the nails. Pretty cool, right? John chapter 20. So God gives me this vision, back to that, of these oxen that are joined together, and there's a yoke that holds them together, right? Now, you can see it in a couple ways. In English, the letter H looks like two number ones with a crossbeam. It's almost like two number ones or two oxen with that yoke across them. And the letter H in Hebrew is He. He is the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. 5 is the number of grace. So see God's grace in here. But now, I'm not seeing the letter H. I've been seeing the number 11. So I'm seeing this thing, these two oxen with a yoke, but I'm seeing the number 11 when I look at the oxen. And I suppose you can see the two number ones. What's holding them together? That's spirit that is holding these two number ones together. It's spirit. So you might not see the crossbeam in between these two number ones, but it's there. The spirit, you can't see the spirit with your eyes, but it's holding these two number ones together. And it's sealed that way. These two number ones can never be separated because it is God who joined them together. Now, here's another fascinating thing. So God's giving me this vision of two oxen or two oxes that become oxen joined together as one. They look like the number 11. And then guess what in Hebrew? Since their letters are their numbers, because that's how they number things, their letters and numbers, right? So the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which would be the number 1, is the letter Aleph. And do you know what Aleph is a picture of? It's a picture of an ox. And if you have two Alephs, you have two oxes. And when you take these two oxes, these Alephs, these number 1s, and you join them together, they look like the number 11. And that is God's covenant sign to me. And I am sharing it with you guys. And if you see this number 11, I want you to remember, just like Noah, when you look to the rainbow, remember my covenant I made with you. And if you see that number 11, you guys, take it as a great gift. Don't be jealous that I see it all the time and maybe you don't. Don't go looking for it. But if you see it, don't worship the number. Don't pray to the number. Don't say, let me make a carved image out of it so I can bow to it and all that. No, no, no. But remember it as a covenant sign that what God has joined together, his spirit and your spirit. They are united as one. And what God has joined together, let no one separate it. Let no one separate it. They can't. So don't try. Don't separate yourself in your mind from God. Don't say he's apart from me. He's not with me. He hates me. He's punishing me. Stop it. Remember that he's one with you. And remember this. As he is, present tense, so are you. Present tense. Not so you will be someday. So are you. Present tense. When? When you're in heaven? No. In this world, it says. 1 John 4:17. In this world. As he is, so are you. In this world. How's that? I thought Jesus is up in heaven. No. He might be, but he's also in you, in spirit. You understand? In your spirit. He's not apart from you. You're seated in him in the heavenly places. You're there too. But you're also here on earth. Because spirit doesn't have limits. Spirit isn't held by walls and captive. No. Your spirit's in heaven, but your spirit's on earth. You understand? Because that same spirit that dwells in you also dwells in Jesus Christ himself. And they're one. You're not two that are separated. You're joined together as one. And that's his covenant. And that's his covenant sign to me. And I'm sharing that sign with you. And I hope you take it. And I hope you are blessed by it. And I hope you remember it and cherish it. Don't worship the number. Just thank God for that sign. And that's it. I love you guys. Hope you have a great day. I got to get going. We'll talk to you again. And I love you all. Bye-bye.